The waitress sat outside crying. The mafia boss sent 7 men to wait with her until... The cold was the first insult. It crawled under the thin polyester of my blue Finch uniform, finding the damp skin where the tears had run. New Brixton in winter does not just chill you. It is violation. It seeps into your bones and makes a home there. I was sitting on the bottom step of the diner, the one advertised as being open 24/7, the same diner that had just thrown me out at 10:30 at night. My shift was not cut. I was fired. My cheeks still stung, not from a slap, but from the freezing air hitting the wet tracks of my humiliation. I had refused. I had said no. In this part of town, no is a luxury you cannot afford. The grease from the diner's vent hood hung thick in the air, mixing with the metallic smell of the drizzle. I tasted salt and old fryer oil. A car slid into view, silent as oil on water, a black sedan, the kind of car that does not have monthly payments. It has ownership. It stopped right in front of me, its engine a low, unheard rumble. It just sat there, idling in the rain, its tinted windows reflecting the weak neon of the blue Finch sign, turning the Finch into a fractured, bleeding red bird. I felt it before I saw anything else. I felt watched. It was a physical pressure against my skin, heavier and colder than the rain. The click of the deadbolt was painfully loud in the quiet street. Boyd Kessler, the manager with the spine of a jellyfish, was locking up. He saw me, huddled on his doorstep like garbage, his lips, always damp, twisted into a sneer. "On Albion Street," he hissed, his voice just loud enough for me to hear. "You do not get to cry louder than the Albion Street crew. Mara!" He was not just warning me. He was threatening me. He wanted me gone. He was afraid of what I had seen, terrified of the connected customer whose wandering hands I had pushed away. Boyd was a man drowning in his own fear, and he hated me for showing him he could sink. I pulled my knees to my chest, trying to become small, to disappear into the concrete, but weakness on Albion Street paints a target. Footsteps, sloppy and uneven, approached from the sidewalk, not from the car, someone else. "Hey now." A man smelling of stale whiskey and desperation leaned into my space, blocking what little light there was. "Manager giving you trouble, that guy in the booth. He's a big deal. You should have been nice." He reached for my arm. His fingers were greasy. "Come on, let's get in my car. We can talk about it." His fingers were about to close on my elbow when the sedan door opened. The sound was a heavy, solid thunk. It cut through the night with absolute authority. A man emerged. He did not rush. He was tall, dressed in a dark wool overcoat that probably cost more than my brother's mounting medical bills. He moved with a stillness that was louder than any shout. He did not even look at the whiskey breath vulture grabbing me. His eyes, dark and completely unreadable, found mine. "Are you all right?" His voice was low, a rumble like stones shifting underwater. It was not a question of concern. It was a demand for facts. He reached into his pocket, not for a wallet, not for a weapon. He pulled out a heavy, polished silver lighter. It looked old and heavy. He did not light anything. He just flicked the cap open and snapped it shut. A sharp, metallic click-clack, a signal. It was like the street exhaled them. From the alley beside the blue Finch, from the shadow of the closed newsstand, from the dark mouth of the street opposite, 7 men. They appeared without a sound, moving in perfect, unnatural unison. They wore dark clothes, practical, anonymous. They formed a crescent moon around me, their backs to the street, their faces toward the man who had summoned them. They blocked the rain. They blocked the prying eyes. They blocked the entire world. The man holding my arm froze. His hand dropped as if my skin had suddenly turned to acid. He took one step back, then another. His drunken confidence evaporated, leaving only raw panic. He turned and practically ran, his footsteps chaotic as he disappeared into the night. Boyd, who had been watching the entire exchange through the glass door, suddenly became fascinated by a smudge on the handle. He turned his back, wiping it furiously. The tall man stepped closer. He shrugged off his heavy coat, The scent of it hit me not cologne, but something clean, like ozone and iron and expensive wool. He draped it over my shoulders. The weight was immediate, a heavy, warm anchor in the freezing night. It enveloped me, cocooning me in a safety I had no right to feel. He crouched slightly, not to intimidate, but to be on my level. He asked only one question. How long do you intend to sit here? My teeth were chattering, but not just from the cold. It was fear. Fear of Boyd, fear of the Albion crew, and now a deep, primal fear of this man and his silent army. But the other thing, the thing for Rowan, was bigger. It was the only thing I had left. I looked at the cheap plastic watch on my wrist. The glowing numbers were blurry through my tears. Until midnight, I whispered, the words catching in my throat, when the file I set unlocks. I did not explain. I could not. He looked at his own wrist, at a watch that glowed with a soft, expensive white light. He nodded. Once, as if I had just confirmed the time for a business meeting. He stood to his full height and looked at the men who waited. Sit with her. They did not sit. They occupied. One took the alley mouth, one the curb. One simply stood by the lamppost, becoming a thicker shadow. They did not speak. They just existed, a silent human fortress built around a single, broken waitress. And the tall man, the man who commanded shadows, he sat down on the grime-covered concrete step. He did not crowd me. He left a foot of space between us, a space that I, and only I, could choose to close. The drizzle turned meaner, colder, minutes dragged by, thick as mud. A car painted with the logo of the Municipal Integrity Coalition crawled past, its spotlight sweeping the buildings. Cops. My stomach clenched. They were the last people I wanted to see. The MIC was complicated. I tensed, ready to be told to move along, ready for the questions I could not answer. The man nearest the street, the one with shoulders as wide as the diner door, spoke. His voice was flat, meant only for me, and he did not move his lips. Not real police. Do not let them see your face. I obeyed instantly, sinking my chin deep into the luxurious wool collar of the coat. I looked at the man beside me, and he was just watching the rain, as if sitting on a cold curb surrounded by bodyguards was a perfectly normal Tuesday night. I realized with a sudden, sickening lurch what this was. My wait was not a desperate, lonely act anymore. By sitting with me, he had taken my side. Waiting until midnight was no longer just a promise to my brother. It was the first shot fired in a war I did not even know I was starting. The silence on the step was heavy, broken only by the hiss of rain on the pavement. The man beside me, Lorenzo, had not moved. He was a statue carved from shadows and patience. Finally, he spoke, his voice not disturbing the quiet, but becoming part of it. Midnight is a specific time. You are not waiting for a bus. I flinched, pulling his coat tighter. The warmth was confusing. The man was terrifying. It is my phone, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I tapped the breast pocket of my uniform, under his coat, where the cheap smartphone was pressed against my ribs. My brother, Rowan, he was a port driver. I took a shaky breath, the words tasting like ash. He got tangled with Santo Morelli. You know that name? Lorenzo's face gave nothing away, but a flicker in his dark eyes told me he did. Morelli runs things down at the docks through a shell. The Department of Harbor Compliance, the DHC. It is a joke. They are just extortionists in official-looking jackets. Rowan was forced into being a pawn, moving things he should not have, just to keep his license. But he was smart. He collected proof. One of the 7 men, the one with a thin earpiece and eyes that never stopped scanning, Ivo, stepped closer to Lorenzo and spoke too low for me to hear. Lorenzo nodded, a minimal gesture. This data, I continued, needing to say it. Rowan compiled everything. Shipping manifests, payoff ledgers, recordings. He put it in an encrypted vault. My phone holds the final decryption key. At exactly midnight, the file uploads automatically to Whisperglass. The leak platform, Lorenzo stated. It was not a question. If I am caught, I said, my voice gaining a thin, reedy strength. If they grab me, the system still uploads. It dumps everything, but it becomes an anonymous data drop. Rowan set it so that if I am free, I am the key. I can legally verify the source. I can testify that the data is untampered. Without me, it is just noise. With me, it is a legal case that can bring them down. So they need you alive, Lorenzo concluded, until 11:59, and they need you gone at 12:01. A chill unrelated to the weather went straight down my spine. Yes. Ivo spoke again, this time loud enough for me to catch. 2 vehicles, rental plates, but they match known assets of the Albion Street crew, circling the block. They are not leaving. Another man, built like a brick wall, Rook, raised a small black device. A high-pitched, almost subsonic whine filled the air for a second, a feeling more than a sound. It was meant to be a deterrent, like a sonic fence. The 2 cars slowed at the corner, hesitated, and then continued their slow, circling patrol. "They are staying," Rook said, his voice a low growl. Inside the diner, Boyd Kessler was pacing. He was on his phone, his face pale and sweaty, even in the cold. The man called Saint, who moved with a dancer's impossible grace, tilted his head. He was too far to hear, but he was reading Boyd's panic like a book. "He is scared," Saint murmured. "He just called an unknown number. He said Phoenix Gate Terminal twice, and something about the TAA. Tri-County Adaptive Authority," Lorenzo said, his gaze hardening. He looked back at me, his eyes sharp enough to cut. "The TAA controls Phoenix Gate, and you did not take this data to the MIC. I laughed. The sound was ugly, breaking in my throat. "The MIC, the Municipal Integrity Coalition?" I looked him dead in the eye. "The MIC are the ones who signed the search warrant for my apartment 3 days ago. They are the ones who legally tossed my home, looking for Rowan's stolen port equipment. They are on Morelli's payroll, same as the DHC. The admission hung in the air, damning and final. One of the 7, Maceo, the one who looked restless, like a tightly coiled spring, stepped forward. "Boss, this is a compromised position. We should move her. Now." Lorenzo did not even look at him. His eyes stayed locked on me. "She chose to wait. We wait." The authority in those 4 words was absolute. Maceo stepped back, his jaw tight, but he obeyed. The rain fell, the cars circled, the clock on my phone screen felt like it was ticking backward. A group of teenagers, loud with cheap beer and false bravado, rounded the corner, looking for trouble. They saw me. A woman huddled on a step and grinned, their intentions sharpening. "Well, look what we got here." They did not see the 7 men, not until one of them, Gage, a tall man with scars on his knuckles, took half a step out of the shadows. He did not say a word. He just looked at them. He was a predator, and they were, very suddenly, prey. The laughter died in their throats. The bravado vanished. They stumbled over each other to get away, disappearing back into the night. A moment later, the quietest of the men, Kellen, appeared at my side. He held out a steaming styrofoam cup. "From the all-night bodega," he said. "Hot cocoa. Sugar is already in it." I looked at him, confused. He knelt, placing it in my numb hands. His eyes were kind, and it was almost more painful than the cold. "We waited like this once," he said, his voice barely audible. "For my sister, the waiting, it is the worst part." He retreated to his post. I sipped the cocoa. It was too sweet, chalky, and the most wonderful thing I had ever tasted. It burned a line of warmth down to my frozen stomach. A large black umbrella opened above me, blocking the drizzle. Lorenzo was holding it, a massive, old-fashioned thing with a solid wooden handle. He did not huddle under it with me. He just stood, holding it over my head, letting the rain darken the shoulders of his shirt. He was getting wet to keep me dry. The gesture was so profoundly decent. It felt alien. "My mother," he said, his voice pitched low, not looking at me but at the street. "She would wait by the door. After my father left, she would wait for the bell to ring, for him to come back. She was convinced he would, if she just waited long enough. He paused, and the rain seemed to get louder. It never rang, but she waited every night for 2 years. Some waits are a prayer, Mara, some are a prison. He did not ask me which mine was. He did not have to. My phone buzzed, a harsh, violent vibration against my chest. I fumbled it out of my pocket, my fingers clumsy with cold. The screen lit up my face, showing a new text from an unknown number. 5 words in stark capital letters. Come to the port. Rowan is being held. My blood turned to ice water. The cup slipped from my fingers, splashing hot brown liquid over the concrete. My hand, the one holding the phone, began to shake violently. Rowan, they had him. It was a trap. It had to be a trap. They have him, I choked out, showing him the screen. They have my brother. Lorenzo looked at the message. His expression did not change. He was a man made of calm. He looked at his watch. 10:51. We will take you there, he said. His voice was flat, a blade of pure steel. But not before midnight. The text message glowed on the screen. A beacon of damnation. Rowan was being held. Lorenzo did not waste a second. The world, which had been frozen in a tableau of cold rain and waiting, exploded into motion. Evo, route, sable, vehicle, rook, package, Lorenzo snapped, his voice ablade. Before I could process, the 2 rental cars that had been circling the block cut their lazy loop. Their engines roared, headlights slashing through the rain as they accelerated directly toward us. They were done waiting. The text message had been a trigger for them, too. Now, Lorenzo yelled. The man named Sable, who had been standing near the sedan, was already in motion. He vaulted into the driver's seat of a black SUV I had not even registered was parked in the alley. He gunned the engine and wrenched the wheel, sliding the heavy vehicle perpendicular across the street. It was a perfect instant blockade, a wall of steel that shielded us from the oncoming cars. The 2 rentals screeched to a halt, their tires smoking on the wet asphalt, barely 10 feet from the SUV's broadside. Doors flew open. Mara with me. It was Rook. The mountain of a man did not wait for my permission. He swept me off my feet, his arm locking around my waist as he lifted me like I weighed nothing. It was not a romantic gesture. It was an extraction. I was the package. He began running, carrying me in a low crouch toward Lorenzo's original sedan. Phone, Kellen, the kind-eyed man, was beside us. I fumbled for it. He did not take it. He held open a thick, silver-lined bag. In here. Faraday. They cannot track it. They cannot wipe it. I dropped the phone inside, and he sealed it instantly, severing my connection to the world, to the midnight deadline. My stomach hollowed out. A high-pitched whine, like an angry hornet, sliced through the air. Up, drone, Gage yelled. He pointed at the sky. A small, dark shape with no markings was hovering just above the blue finch, its camera lens a single, malevolent red eye. Gage did not hesitate. He raised a weapon that looked like a modified flare gun, aimed and fired. There was a soft thump and a whir. A weighted net shot into the air, unfurling perfectly. It enveloped the drone, and the small machine, tangled and useless, dropped from the sky. It landed on the diner's flat roof with a muted, metallic crash. Through the diner window, I saw Boyd Kessler. His face was a mask of pure terror. He ripped the keys from his belt, threw them onto the counter, and bolted for the back door, abandoning his post. As the first of the Albion crew goons scrambled out of their car, Saint, the graceful man, moved. He had a spool of what looked like fishing line in 3 swift, practiced motions. He strung it taut between the diner's door handle and a nearby parking meter. He pulled it tight, a low, invisible tripwire. The first man, charging in a blind rush, hit the line at shin height. His legs were ripped out from under him. He went down, smashing his face into the pavement with a sickening crack. The men behind him piled up, a domino fall of limbs and curses. It was brutal, efficient, and bought us seconds. Lorenzo was holding the sedan's back door open, his body shielding me from the chaos. Rook deposited me inside, and Lorenzo slid in beside me. The car was already moving. Sable now behind the wheel, pulling away from the curb as Rook and the others piled into the second SUV. "You have two choices," Lorenzo said, his voice calm amidst the shouts and the screech of tires. The sedan was accelerating, fast, turning into the dark labyrinth of New Brixton's industrial sector. "We have a safe house, ironclad. You go there. You are safe. Absolutely. You wait out the night. You are gone by morning, or you come with me. To the port. It is dangerous. Extremely. And I cannot guarantee what we will find." He was giving me an out. After everything, he was offering me an escape. I thought of Rowan. I thought of the text. Rowan is being held. "I choose to see my brother alive," I said, my voice shaking but firm. Lorenzo just nodded, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Ivo, talk to me." The earpiece in Sable's ear crackled. Ivo's voice, disembodied and digitized, filled the car. "They are following both vehicles, and I have a new problem. DHC has set up a pop-up checkpoint at Greywater Bridge. It is fake, but it is blocking the most direct route to the terminal." "Reroute," Sable said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Already doing it. We go under, not over. Take the service tunnel access at Brindle." We plunged under an overpass, the rain hammering on the roof like drumfire. The car felt like a small, safe bubble in a world trying to drown me. But then, Maceo's voice came over the internal comms from the follow car. "Boss, we have a problem." "Define it," Lorenzo said, his body tensing beside me. "I am picking up a signal. It is one of ours, an old Scavo Syndicate locator beacon. It is faint, but it is coming from somewhere inside our convoy." The car went silent. The only sound was the rhythmic thwack, thwack, thwack of the windshield wipers. A traitor. One of his men, one of the 7 who had stood with me, who had brought me cocoa, who had carried me to safety. One of them was a beacon for the enemy. Lorenzo did not speak. He did not turn. I felt, more than saw. His gaze moved to the rearview mirror. He was watching the headlights of the SUV behind us. He was observing, not accusing, just memorizing, every action, every word, every possibility. He was a general recalculating a battle in his head. "We stick to the plan," Lorenzo said, his voice level, betraying nothing. "Brindle now." Sable took a hard right, sending the car rattling down a potholed access road I never knew existed. We skidded to a stop in front of a chain-link fence topped with razor wire, the abandoned Brindle lumber yard. Gage and Rook were out of the SUV before it stopped moving. Rook produced a massive pair of bolt cutters and snapped the padlock like it was a pretzel. Gage pushed the gate open, the metal screaming in protest. They cleared a path into the darkness of the yard, between stacks of rotting lumber. Sable killed the headlights, driving us into the pitch-black shelter of an open-sided shed. The follow car pulled in right behind us. The engines were cut. Silence. Utter, complete, terrifying silence. I looked at my watch. The glowing numbers were a condemnation. 11:17, 43 minutes until midnight. Lorenzo's voice cut through the dark. He was not speaking to me, but to all of them, to the loyal and to the traitor. "Nobody leaves Mara behind tonight." I grabbed the seatbelt, pulling it tight across my chest. It was not for safety from a crash. It was just something to hold on to. 43 minutes. I just had to hold on. Just until midnight. The engine ticked as it cooled, the sound unnaturally loud in the sudden, deep silence of the Brindle lumber yard. The air in the car was thick, heavy with the smell of old, damp sawdust, diesel, and the metallic tang of rain on the shed's tin roof. The quiet was worse than the chase. It was a suffocating, shared knowledge one of the men outside, one of the protectors, was a Judas. Lorenzo did not speak. He just sat, a figure of absolute stillness in the dark beside me. Then he moved, a slow, deliberate reach into the back of the sedan. I tensed, my muscles screaming. He was not reaching for a weapon. He brought forward a dark wool beanie and a pair of matching gloves. He did not hand them to me. He placed them on the empty space on the seat between us, an offering, not a command. "You're shaking," he stated, his voice a low rumble. It was true. My whole body was vibrating, a motor of pure, cold fear. I picked up the hat, my fingers clumsy. The wool was rough, but the idea of it was warm. I pulled it down over my damp hair, and the simple act of covering my ears muted the sound of the rain, making the car feel even more like a small, isolated pod. I pulled on the gloves. That small, practical kindness broke something in me. The words spilled out, hushed and desperate. Rowan never wanted any of this. He just wanted to drive a crane. My voice was a reedy whisper, but in the silence, it was a shout. He finished his apprenticeship, but he had debt from the training program. It was only $5,000, but it felt like $5 million to us. We do not have that kind of money. I explained the TAA, the so-called Tri-County Adaptive Authority, and their port protection fee, a friendly offer of union help that was really just extortion. Rowan said no. He told them he paid his union dues. He was not paying for air. So the next day, a DHC inspector showed up. A random inspection, they called it. I could see the scene in my head, Rowan telling me, his face pale with fury. They failed him, said his license was improperly filed, a technicality. They confiscated it, told him he could earn it back by doing them. Favors. Moving containers he was not supposed to log, looking the other way. He was not a pawn. He was a hostage. Lorenzo listened. The darkness was a mask, hiding his expression, but I felt his attention. It was total. When I finished, the silence stretched again, but it felt different, weaker. The Scavo name, he said finally, his voice soft. It meant something different from my grandfather. The old ways, blood and fear, that is the business he built. He shifted in his seat, the leather groaning quietly. I withdrew from that. The Scavo Civic Trust is not a shell. Mara. It is what I am building. We protect this neighborhood. We fund the clinics. We keep the loan sharks out. We provide stability. A wall against men like the one who grabbed you tonight. His voice hardened, a quiet anger entering it. But men like Morelli, they do not understand a withdrawal. They only understand a vacuum. They see the peace I have built as a weakness, as territory I have surrendered. They are pulling me back into a war I do not want to fight, using the old ways against my people. The implication was clear. By attacking me, a nobody waitress on a Scavo street, they were attacking him. The tension in the car was a physical thing, a pressure on my chest. From the front seat, Kellen, the kind one, twisted a knob. The car radio flickered on, the volume so low it was just a suggestion of sound, an old soul song. All strings and heartache, tinny and faint, a small, insane act of normalcy. I glanced at the floor, at the dark, sticky puddle of cocoa I had spilled. I meant what I said, Lorenzo murmured, following my gaze. I have had coffee that costs $50 a cup in Milan. I have never before tonight had real hot cocoa. A small, involuntary sound escaped my throat. It was not a laugh, not a sob, but my lips pulled into a shape that felt unfamiliar. A smile. It was the most absurd, terrifyingly human thing to say in the middle of this. The space in the car, which had felt vast and cold, suddenly shrank. I was acutely aware of his shoulder, just inches from mine. The smell of his wool coat, that scent of iron and ozone and cold night air. The air was thick with the scent of the damp wood. And now, with him. He turned his head slowly. I could not see his eyes, but I felt his gaze. "When you want to leave," he said. His voice a low vibration that I felt in my bones. "When this becomes too much, you say one word. I will stop. I will get you out. Understood." He was talking about the port, about Morelli, but he was also talking about this, about the suffocating closeness, the pressure, the fear. He was giving me the power that had been stolen from me at the diner. He was giving me the no that had cost me my job. My hand, now covered in the glove he gave me, moved. It was not a thought. It was an instinct. I lifted it and placed it on the back of his hand where it rested, palm down on the center console. A light touch. just scratchy wool on his cold skin. It was not a caress. It was an answer. It was a silent pact. I am not leaving. I am not stopping. His hand did not move, did not flinch, did not react at all. He just accepted it. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, fear, gratitude, a consuming curiosity, and something else, a bright, hot spark of something dangerous and electric and alive right here in the suffocating dark with this man. The static of the comms crackled, making me jump. Saint's voice, smooth as silk. Perimeter secure, no sign of pursuit in the immediate area. We are dark. Evo's voice followed, cold and precise as a clock. Clock is at 11:23, 37 minutes to midnight. 37 minutes. The numbers crashed into me. The reality. I was sitting in a dark, rotting lumber yard, hunted, with a traitor somewhere feet away, about to wage war on a criminal empire. All for a file that might get us all killed. I am not weak. I repeated it in my head. I am not weak. I am doing this for Rowan. But I was so cold. The adrenaline was fading, and the deep, wet chill of New Brixton was settling into my bones, a chill that no coat or hat could touch. As if he could read my mind, Lorenzo reached back again. He pulled out a thin, folded blanket, the kind kept in a car trunk for emergencies, silver on one side, dark blue on the other. He did not drape it over me. He just held it out. My heart, that stupid, traitorous muscle, did a painful flip. I took the blanket, my gloved fingers brushing his. I unfolded it and wrapped it around my shoulders, over his heavy coat. It was thin, smelling faintly of oil and canvas, but it was another layer between me and the night. I huddled into the warmth, my hand still resting on his. I closed my eyes just for a second in this small, dark, protected space. Fwee, fwee, fwoo! My eyes snapped open beside me. Lorenzo had gone rigid. It came again. From the darkness outside the gates, a long, two-toned whistle. Not a bird, not the wind. It was a signal. The pursuers. They had found us. The whistle hung in the air, thin and sharp as a razor, cutting through the drumming of the rain. Fwee, fwee, fwoo. Lorenzo's body went rigid. My hand was still resting on his, and I felt the muscles in his forearm bunch into solid knots of steel. The small, fragile bubble of warmth we had built in the darkness did not just pop. It shattered. "They found us," I whispered, my voice cracked with panic. "No," Lorenzo said, his voice flat and cold as the night. "They were led. That was the all clear from their scout. The traitor told them we were here. They are moving in." Before he could give a command, a sharp, frantic tap, tap, tap came from the back of the shed, the side hidden from the main gate. Gage, the tall man with the scarred knuckles, spun instantly, his hand moving to a weapon holstered on his vest. Saint was already there, melting out of the car's shadow, his body pressed against the rotting wooden planks. "Scavo," a woman's voice called, muffled but urgent. "I'm a friend of Rowan Quinn. My name is Tessa Lark. He told me to come here." Lorenzo's eyes locked on mine, a silent, intense question. "Tessa," I breathed, nodding frantically. "She is a journalist, an independent. Rowan trusted her. He was feeding her information." "Let her in," Lorenzo commanded. Saint did not unbar a door. He simply pulled a loose plank aside, creating a gap just wide enough for a person. A woman slipped through, small, wired, and dripping wet. She clutched a hard-sided, waterproof case to her chest like a life vest. Her eyes were fast and sharp, taking in the entire scene in one sweep, the two expensive, mud-splattered vehicles, the 7 silent, armed men, and me, huddled in a blanket and a coat that was obviously not mine. "You must be Mara," she said, her voice breathless. She did not wait for an answer. She looked at Lorenzo. "You must be the muscle. Rowan said he had a contingency if things went sideways." "I am the owner," Lorenzo replied, his voice devoid of warmth. "What do you have?" "The backup," Tessa said. She snapped the case open. revealing a heavy-duty, ruggedized hard drive. Rowan gave me this 3 days ago, but it is not the main file. It is just the key index. It is useless without the main vault. We know, I said, my teeth chattering. We are waiting. Midnight, Whisperglass. Tessa shook her head, her dark, wet hair flinging droplets that caught the dim light. You do not understand. You think it is an anonymous dump. That was Plan B. Plan A is It is different. Rowan called it the Living Key Protocol. She pointed a trembling finger at me. It is a new feature on the platform. Whisperglass Live. At exactly 12 o'clock, the vault opens, but it only activates if the platform can verify your biometrics, your voice, Mara, a live video feed of your face. You have to speak a passphrase. If you are not online, if you are captured, if you are not alive. Her voice dropped, the reality of it settling over us. The system interprets it as a hostile takeover. The data does not just lock, it permanently erases everything. All of Rowan's work, gone. We get one shot at this. At midnight, you have to be sitting in front of a clean, secure, high-bandwidth uplink, ready to go live. The breath I was holding escaped in a ragged puff. This was a nightmare. The stakes just kept rising. It was not just my life. It was Rowan's only chance. What, specifically, is on it? Lorenzo asked. His focus was total. The whole rotten tree, Tessa said, her eyes burning with a journalistic fire. The complete TAA money laundering ledger, tracing millions in port fees to offshore accounts. But that is just paper. It has video, Scavo, body cam footage Rowan managed to copy from a DHC inspector. It shows Santo Morelli himself at Phoenix Gate Terminal, shaking hands with Commissioner Kyle Dorn of the MIC. My blood ran cold. The MIC, the real police Lorenzo had warned me about. They are laughing, Tessa continued, her voice thick with disgust, agreeing on compliance schedules for the month, and it has the whitewash list, a full schedule of container numbers, flag to pass customs, no inspection, drugs, weapons, untaxed goods, whatever Morelli wants to bring in. Dorn guarantees its safe passage. The air in the shed was suffocating. This was not just corruption. This was the city itself, sold to the highest bidder. Loren, this changes the location, not the threat, Lorenzo said, his voice slicing through the silence. Rook, we need independent power. Get the generator from the trunk. Rook nodded, moving with silent speed. Sable, full spectrum jamming. I want nothing electronic getting in or out of this yard except what Evo authorizes. We blind them. Sable pulled a heavy-looking briefcase from the SUV and began to flip switches. Gage, secure the openings. I want that netting on every window and door. Non-lethal. We trap. We do not kill. Gage grabbed spools of high-tensile netting and began to move. The men worked with the terrifying efficiency of a team that had done this 100 times before. They were turning the shed into a tactical fortress. In the middle of the quiet, focused chaos, Lorenzo's personal phone buzzed. It was a sharp, intrusive sound. He pulled it from his coat pocket, a slim, severe device. He looked at the screen, and his face, that perfect mask of cold control, flickered. It was the first time I'd seen him look confused. He held the screen out for me to see. It was a text message from Boyd Kessler. My stomach turned to acid. He says he was forced, Lorenzo said, his voice low. He says Morelli has his wife. He's begging for help. He says they are at his apartment back on Albion Street. It is a trap, I hissed, the words tasting like poison. He is a coward. He is lying. He threw me out to save himself. Almost certainly. Lorenzo agreed, his gaze locked on the screen. But he did not put the phone away. Then he was hesitating. I could see the calculation running behind his eyes, the risk of the trap versus the reality of an innocent woman. He was a man who had built his reputation on protecting his neighborhood, on protecting the weak from men like Morelli. This was a direct challenge to his code. He was torn, and in that second, I knew he was not going to make the call. He was making me make it. He had made my weight his. Now he was making this decision mine. I took a deep breath, the smell of sawdust and rain filling my lungs. We save him. Lorenzo looked up, his eyes sharp, surprised. We save her, I corrected myself, my voice stronger now. I know Boyd, he's a rat, but his wife, Sharon, she's a good person. She volunteers at the clinic. She does not deserve to be a pawn in this. We do not leave people behind. Right. I had done it. A fired waitress, had given an order to Lorenzo Scavo. A slow, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of his mouth. It was not humor. It was approval. The hesitation vanished, replaced by an iron certainty. A two-pronged plan, he said, instantly in command. Evo, new locations. We need that clean broadcast point, secure, high bandwidth, not on our grid. The Verdant Library, Evo's voice replied instantly over the comms. The old municipal building. It has a dedicated fiber line. Independent power. We helped fund their community server upgrade last year. It is clean. Good, Saint, Kellen. You're with Tessa and Mara. Get them to the library. Secure the server room. Kellen, you're on the uplink. Saint, you are the door. No one gets in. My heart went cold. And you? I am going back to Albion Street, Lorenzo said, standing. He seemed to fill the entire shed. Rook, Sable, Gage, you are with me. We are going to find out about Mr. Kessler's wife. What about Maceo? Sable asked, his voice rough from the doorway. Maceo stays in the trail car, Lorenzo said, his voice perfectly even. He covers the rear, for both teams. I watched Maceo, the restless one, climb into the driver's seat of the Follow SUV. As his hand brushed his radio harness, the faint soul music still playing on Kellen's radio suddenly crackled with a loud burst of static. Lorenzo saw it. His eyes met mine in the dark. He did not say a word. He just added another piece to the puzzle. Another black mark against Maceo's name. Everyone, move, Lorenzo commanded. Evo, you are our eyes. Use the neighborhood arc. I want to see every street corner, every alley between here and the library, and here in Albion. The arc is active, boss, Evo's voice replied. I see the pursuit team. They are setting up a perimeter at the main gate. They think they have us boxed in. They're about to be surprised, Lorenzo said. The sedan door opened, and the cold, wet air was a slap in the face. Kellen was at my side. This way, Mara, we take the sedan. It is faster. Lower profile. I looked at Lorenzo, who was already striding toward the SUV. Shrugging into a tactical vest Rook had handed him, he was leaving. He was walking back into the trap to save the wife of the man who had betrayed me. Lorenzo, I called out, my voice small. He stopped and turned, a dark silhouette against the gray light of the yard. Be careful, I whispered. He just nodded, a short, sharp dip of his chin. Midnight, Mara, be ready. I slid into the back of the sedan with Kellen in the driver's seat and Saint in passenger. Tessa got in beside me, clutching her hard drive. The engine turned over. A low, powerful rumble. I looked at the car's clock. The glowing red numbers were a fire in the darkness. 11:41. There was no turning back. The Verdant Library was not a place of comfort. It was a tomb of old stone, smelling of damp paper, furniture polish, and the ghosts of 1,000 silent readers. The rain lashed against the tall, arched windows, distorting the streetlights into bleeding streams of color. We were in the basement archives, a room lined with humming server racks and steel shelves. It was warmer here. The air kept artificially dry to protect the city's old records. Tessa was already plugged in, her laptop a spiderweb of cables connected to the main server. Uplink is solid, she muttered, her fingers flying. Bandwidth is clean, shielded, this is the spot. Kellen was in the corner, setting up a heavy-duty battery array. He was the calm one, the eye of the storm. Saint, however, did not enter the room. He stood directly in the doorway, his body a living bulkhead, his gaze fixed on the dark hallway we had just come through. My job was to sit on a metal stool, to wait, and the waiting was a pure, physical agony. Now that I was not running, the image of Rowan flooded my mind. Rowan tied to a chair in a dark, wet shipping container. Rowan hurt. Rowan alone. My hands, which had finally warmed in the gloves, began to shake again, a violent, uncontrollable tremor. I wrapped my arms around myself, my teeth chattering. "He will be okay," Kellen said, his voice soft, noticing me. "The boss, Lorenzo. He does not fail. He does not leave people behind." I wanted to believe him, but Lorenzo was running back into a trap, all because I had said save her. And I was sitting here, helpless, watching the red digital clock on the server rack, 11:47, 13 minutes. My phone, the one Kellen was holding, buzzed. He pulled it from the Faraday bag, looked at the screen, and his eyebrows shot up. "It is the boss." He held it out to me. My fingers were clumsy as I swiped to accept the video call. Lorenzo's face filled the screen. He looked wrecked. He was outside, the rain plastering his dark hair to his forehead. He was breathing hard, his chest heaving under the tactical vest. The sound of a door being smashed open echoed from his end, and a faint cry, a woman's. "Mara," he said, his voice a raw gasp. "Are you okay?" I breathed. "Sharon Boyd's wife. She is safe." He was already moving, fast, the camera showing a blurred glimpse of a dark street. She was tied up, but the apartment was empty. It was a decoy, a test, to see if I would come. A test? To see if I would sacrifice a civilian for the mission. His eyes found mine, intense even through the small screen. "Listen to me. I am on my way. I am 12 minutes out." "Lorenzo, they are hunting you. It is a trap." "Just look at me, Mara." His voice was low, commanding. "You are shaking. I can see it. Breathe. Breathe with me. Now." He took a deep, visible breath, holding my gaze. Inhale. My own lungs, tight with panic, obeyed. I drew in a ragged, painful breath. Exhale. He let his out, and I mirrored him. "Again, he commanded." He breathed in. I breathed in. I pressed the phone to my chest, against my heart, closing my eyes. I could feel the vibration of his voice, the steady, rhythmic sound of his breathing, in and out. It was a lifeline. It was an anchor in the storm, a solid, living thing pulling me back from the edge. My heart, which had been hammering a frantic rhythm of panic, began to slow, to match the steady cadence coming through the phone. Thunk-clack! The world vanished, the lights, the humming servers, the emergency floods, everything. We were plunged into absolute, terrifying darkness. "No," Tessa hissed from the blackness. "No, no, no. They cut the main power from the street. I have got nothing." "Kellen?" Saint's voice was a whip crack from the doorway. "On it," Kellen replied. A second later, there was a heavy mechanical whir and a click. A single, battery-powered emergency bulb flooded our corner with a weak, sickly yellow light. "That is not enough." Tessa was frantic. "The server array is down. The fiber line is dead. I have no uplink." "We do not need the array," Kellen said, his voice calm. He was turning a heavy handle on a metal box, a hand crank generator. "Tessa, plug your uplink into this. It is analog power, shielded. They cannot cut this unless they are physically in this room." Tessa scrambled to reconnect the cables, her face a mask of concentration. From the hallway, Saint spoke, his voice dangerously quiet. "We have company. 2, coming down the main stairs." He did not draw a gun, he just drew a heavy, 4-cell flashlight from his belt, holding it like a club. He stood in the doorway, a solid black wall of defiance. The door at the far end of the hall slammed open. Footsteps, heavy and running, echoed on the concrete. Saint braced himself, ready to swing. But the figure that burst into the yellow emergency light was not an enemy. It was Lorenzo. He was soaked, utterly, completely drenched, as if he had been pulled from the bottom of the river. His black shirt was plastered to his chest, his hair dripping water onto the dusty floor. He was not breathing hard anymore. He was just present. a vortex of energy and quiet violence. The moment he entered, the temperature of the room seemed to rise by 10 degrees. He saw the setup, Kellen cranking, Tessa typing, Sane at the door, lowering the flashlight. Then he saw me. He did not move toward me. He just stood there, dripping, his chest rising and falling, his eyes locked on mine. He was waiting, giving me the choice. The same choice he had given me on the step. The world narrowed to the space between us, the sound of the hand crank, the lashing rain. Tessa's frantic typing, it all faded to a dull roar. I stood up. My legs felt weak like water, but they held. I took one step. He still did not move. He just watched me. I took another. Only then, when I was halfway across the room, did he move. He met me, but he deliberately moved slower than I did, a half beat behind, making it clear that I was the one closing the distance. I stopped, right in front of him. I had to tilt my head back to look up at him. His face was wet, rain and sweat mingling. His eyes were dark, intense, burning. I did not know what to do. My hands were shaking again. He lifted his... Slowly, letting me see them. They were covered in grease and scrapes. He placed them on my shoulders. His touch was firm, grounding, a solid weight. It was not possessive. It was a question. I leaned in. That was all the answer he needed. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me against him in one smooth, powerful motion. It was a collision. I was so cold, and he was a furnace, radiating heat through his wet clothes. It was a deep, profound embrace. One hand was high on my back, tangled in my damp hair, cupping the back of my head, while the other rested solid and sure in the small of my back. He held me tight enough to stop the shaking, but with just enough space for me to breathe. I buried my face in his neck, pressing my forehead against his collarbone. I inhaled. He smelled of the rain, of cold night air, of mint, and a faint, smoky trace of wood, the smell from the lumber yard. My hands clutched his wet shirt, holding on like he was the only solid thing left on earth. He just held me. We stood like that for a full 10 seconds, just breathing. He pulled back, just enough to see my face. His grip on my back did not loosen. His eyes searched mine. They were not asking for permission to take. They were asking if I was here, with him. I gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. He lowered his head, slowly. There was no rush, no greedy lunge. It was deliberate, almost reverent. His lips brushed mine, a feather-light touch, a test. I did not pull away. I rose onto my toes, just slightly, meeting him. His lips settled on mine. It was not a kiss of fire. It was a kiss of rescue. It was slow and deep and tasted of rain and salt. It was a promise and a question and an answer all at once. It was a quiet, desperate merging. His mouth was firm and so warm. He was not claiming me. He was discovering, and I was discovering him. My gloved hands slid up from his chest, tracing the strong, stubborn line of his jaw. The kiss deepened. His hand slid from my back, up my side, his thumb brushing the swell of my breast, a brief, electric touch over the heavy coat, a small sound, a gasp was caught in my throat. And he stopped. He broke the kiss, pulling back just an inch. His forehead rested against mine. We were breathing the same air. His eyes were closed. The passion was there. A roaring fire banked just behind his control. It was burning in the set of his jaw, in the tension of the hand still gripping my back. "After midnight," he whispered, his voice rough. "If you still want this, after you are safe, after this is done." My fingers tightened on his jaw. The electricity was still humming between us, a live wire. The door was still closed, but we both knew, in that second, exactly where it led. It was respect. It was safety. It was the most intense thing I had ever felt. "Tessa," Kellen's voice was sharp, breaking the spell. "We have a signal lock. We are live." Lorenzo and I sprang apart, the cold of the room rushing back into the space between us. 11:55, Tessa announced, her eyes glued to the screen. 5 minutes. The clock on the server rack read 11:56. 4 minutes. "Boss?" a voice called from the hall. "Maceo." He was breathing hard, his face slick with sweat, his eyes wide and agitated. "They are blocking the main street, the MIC. They are setting up a full perimeter. But I know a way. The old utility tunnel. It runs under the street, comes up, 2 blocks over. It is the only fast way out." He gestured down the dark corridor, away from the server room. "We have to go, now." Lorenzo looked at him, his face unreadable in the dim, yellow emergency light. The men tensed. Rook, who had come back from Lorenzo's team, was standing near the doorway. His gaze dropped from Maceo's frantic face to his feet. On the steel-toed side of Maceo's left boot, there was a smear, a small but distinct streak of bright, chemical blue paint. Rook's eyes narrowed, just slightly. It was the exact, custom mixed color of the Blue Finch Diner's exterior trim, the exact spot where Saint had anchored his tripwire hours ago. Maceo had been back, or he had been there, waiting. Tessa, sharp as a needle, caught Rook's glance. She saw him look at the boot, then at Lorenzo. Her eyes widened, just a fraction, and she gave a single, tiny shake of her head, a silent, desperate no. Lorenzo did not look at the boot. He did not look at Rook. His eyes remained locked on Maceo. His voice was quiet, almost conversational, cutting through the hum of the hand crank. "Your brother, Maceo, his apprenticeship tuition. The final payment was made 3 days ago. Who paid it?" The air went solid. Maceo froze. The helpful, panicked mask dissolved, replaced by the raw, cornered panic of a trapped animal. The shift was absolute. His hand did not go for his radio. It went to his hip and came back with a 6-inch combat knife, the blade dull in the low light. He was not aiming for Lorenzo. He was aiming for me. He lunged. "She is the only way." Kellen, the kind one, the one who had given me cocoa, reacted. He did not have a weapon. He just threw his body in front of me and Tessa, a human shield. But he was never in danger. Saint moved. He was a whisper, a blur of motion from the doorway. His arm snapped forward, his wrist rotating. A thin, dark shape flew through the air. It did not make a sound until it hit thunk. It was not a killing throw. It was a master's throw. The blade, long and thin, punched directly through the thick fabric of Maceo's jacket. Just above the elbow, it pinned his arm, at the apex of its thrust, to the solid oak doorframe of the archive room. His arm was locked, vibrating with the force of the impact. The knife was still 6 feet from me. Maceo screamed, a sound of agony and pure animal terror. He dropped the knife. "Morelli has her," he shrieked, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the sweat. "He has my mother. He has her in a medical facility. He said he would pull her funding. He promised. He promised he would let her go if I just gave him her." It was a pathetic, ugly tragedy. A man crushed between 2 impossible choices. Lorenzo did not raise his voice. He did not rage. He stepped forward, his shadow falling over the weeping, pinned man. His voice was cold, measured, and more terrifying than any shout. "If you had touched her," Lorenzo said, his voice a low vibration, "if that knife had come 1 inch closer, I could not have saved your mother." He leaned in, his face inches from Maceo's. "Put your other hand on your head, now. You tell me everything, and I will save you both." Maceo's hand, the free one, trembled as he placed it on his head. He was broken. The clock on the wall turned, 11:58. "Rook!" Lorenzo ordered, not looking away from Maceo. Rook was already moving, cutting Maceo's zip ties and expertly restraining his hands. Sable, who had followed Lorenzo in, was on his comms. "All channels are compromised. Maceo was broadcasting our position live, switching to Scavo private network. Now. All units confirm." "Evo. Status," Lorenzo said. Evo's voice came through Lorenzo's earpiece, but it was patched to a speaker Kellen had. "Network active. I am building a ghost perimeter. The neighborhood arc is feeding them a false loop of our position, sending them to the old cannery. It will buy you time, but they are close. They are on the street. As if summoned, a new sound filled the air, a harsh metallic bullhorn from outside, the voice distorted and inhuman. This is the Municipal Integrity Coalition. We have the building surrounded. We know you are in the basement. Send out the witness, Mara Quinn, and you will not be harmed. They were lying. They were here to kill me before the clock struck 12. Gage, Lorenzo snapped. Gage, who had been waiting by the hall window, grunted. He produced a thick, cylindrical stick and cracked it. A blinding, white-hot light filled the corridor. Diversion, he said, and tossed the high-intensity magnesium flare down the hall toward the main stairwell. It erupted in a furious, chemical white sun, turning the shadows into hard, black edges. Shouts of pain and confusion echoed from the stairs. Tessa, Kellen, St. Go, Lorenzo commanded. The freight elevator, now. Tessa grabbed her laptop. Kellen grabbed the hand crank. Saint pulled his knife from the door frame, sparing Maceo not even a glance, and took point. I scrambled to follow, but Lorenzo was faster. He turned to me. The corridor was a long, dark tunnel of bookshelves, the only exit. The elevator was at the far end. There was no time to run. He did not ask. He did not warn. He simply bent and scooped me into his arms. One arm hooked securely under my knees, the other locking around my back, pulling me tight against his chest. It was not a romantic sweep. It was an extraction. It was the fast, efficient, powerful movement of a man who saw an objective and took it. It was, in its own way, the most profound statement of trust he could have made. He was protecting me, but he was also trusting me not to panic, not to fight him. I wrapped my arms around his neck, burying my face against the damp, solid warmth of his shoulder as he began to run. He moved like a force of nature, his long legs eating up the length of the book-lined corridor. I could feel the power in his shoulders, the steady thud of his heart against my ribs. At the far end of the hall, the heavy, steel mesh doors of the freight elevator groaned and slid open. Summoned by Kellen, it gaped, a dark, metallic throat waiting to swallow us. As Lorenzo crossed the threshold, my head turned. I could see the clock on the server room wall, all the way down the hall, its red light burning through the white flare smoke. The numbers seared into my brain. 23:59 and 30 seconds. The deadline was not coming. It was here. Everything was hanging by a single, fraying thread. The heavy steel doors of the freight elevator slid shut, sealing us in a metal box. The world outside, the shouts and the flare smoke, was cut off, replaced by the low hum of the elevator car and the steady, rhythmic whir-click of Kellen cranking the generator. Tessa's laptop, balanced on the battery pack, was the only true light, bathing our faces in a cold, blue-white glow. The air was thick, tasting of iron and ozone. Then, the clock on the laptop's screen, a tiny set of numbers in the corner, flipped. 12 o'clock. The music of the crank, the hum of the elevator. Every sound seemed to die. The world held its breath. Tessa's screen flickered and went black. "No," she breathed. A single line of text appeared, bright white. Whisperglass live. Voice authentication required. Tessa looked at me, her eyes wide. "Now, Mara, your voice, the passphrase." I was still standing where Lorenzo had set me down. My heart was a fist, hammering the inside of my chest. I leaned toward the laptop's microphone. I could feel Lorenzo's presence at my back, not touching, but close enough to feel his heat. "I am Mara Quinn," I said. My voice was low, but it did not shake. "I choose the light." For one agonizing second, nothing happened. Then the screen exploded. It was not just a file dump, it was a detonation. The screen split into a dozen windows, a spreadsheet of fake payroll ledgers for the Department of Harbor Compliance, a separate window of raw body cam footage, the timestamp showing Morelli shaking hands with Commissioner Dorn, their voices clear, their laughter obscene. A long, scrolling list of container numbers, the whitewash list, marked for no inspection at Phoenix Gate Terminal. And then, the last piece. A series of bank transfers, hundreds of thousands of dollars, siphoned from the TAA, moving to a single, untouchable recipient, the Children's Harbor Initiative. A charity, I whispered, horrified. They are using a children's charity. They are monsters, Tessa said, her fingers flying for capturing screenshots, pushing the data stream. We are live. Viewers. Oh my God, it is climbing. 10,000, 20. They are sharing the link. It is going faster than they can stop it. Ivo confirms. Lorenzo's voice was a low rumble in the small space. The Scavo Civic Trust has 3 mirror streams active. It is out. They cannot kill it. The words were barely out of his mouth when the elevator car shuddered violently. A sound of scraping metal from above. The lights, both the main bulb and the laptop screen, died. We were plunged into absolute, suffocating darkness. They cut the main cable, Kellen grunted, his crank spinning faster. The whir now a desperate, high-pitched sound. The laptop screen flickered back to life, but the main lights were dead. Saint snapped a chemical light stick, and the car was filled with a sickly, ghostly green glow. Rook, who had been silent in the corner, slammed his hand onto a panel marked Emergency Maintenance. Switching to independent car battery, he growled. The main light hummed and flickered back on, weak but present. Boom, boom, boom! Heavy, rhythmic pounding echoed from the doors. Mike, open this door. We know you are in there. Saint braced his back against the rattling steel, his entire body a buttress. They are on the ground floor. And the roof. They are trying to breach both. Mara, Tessa said, her face pale in the strange mix of light. You have to talk. Anchor the stream. Rowan's data is the proof, but you are the heart. Tell them what happened. Keep them watching. I looked at Lorenzo. This was not part of the plan. I was the key, not the witness. He stepped forward into the laptop's line of sight and then deliberately to the side, out of the frame. He put his hand on my shoulder. It was heavy, solid, a simple grounding pressure that said, I am here. You are not alone. I leaned into the laptop. My name is Mara Quinn. I started, my voice stronger now. My brother, Rowan Quinn, found this. He was a port driver. He was a good man. Santo Morelli and the DHC. I told them everything. The extortion, the protection fees, the confiscated license. He's not a criminal, I said, my voice thick with tears I refused to shed. He's a hostage, just like this city. I am doing this for him. Rowan, if you can hear me, if you are out there, go to Widemore Bridge. It is our old place, the place we always met. I will find you. Go to the bridge. As I finished, a new message popped up on Tessa's screen. Not a comment from a random viewer, but a prioritized message, flagged by Evo's system as clean. Tessa squinted. It is from an anonymous source. It just says, don't trust Boyd. The fingers on my shoulder tightened, the pressure becoming almost painful for a single second before relaxing. Lorenzo had not moved, but I felt the shift in him. Boyd, the phone call, the wife, the decoy. Rook, Lorenzo said, his voice deadly soft. Get me Sable. Rook tapped his earpiece, his face grim. No signal. Boss, his tracker is dark. He is gone. Lorenzo was silent. The trap had not just been for him. It had been to remove one of his key men from the board. The elevator screamed, a horrifying sound of metal tearing as it was forced upward by the team on the roof. Decision time, Lorenzo said, his mind moving with lightning speed. The data was out. The mission had changed. We split. Rook, Gage Tessa is your only priority. Get her and that hard drive out. Roof hatch, use the fire escape. Create a second target. Evo will guide you. And you, Rook demanded. I am taking Mara to that bridge. His eyes were flat, cold and absolute. Saint, Kellen, you are with me. We are the decoy. We go out the front. Massio, Kellen asked, his hands finally stopping the crank. Evo has him. Lorenzo snapped. "He's being extracted through the tunnel. He's off the board. Now, go." Rook and Gage were already at the ceiling hatch, using a pry bar to pop the bolts. Boom! The elevator doors buckled inward, a clear dent appearing in the steel. "Saint," Lorenzo commanded. "On my mark." He grabbed me, not carrying me this time, but spinning me behind him, one arm locked around my waist, his body a living shield. Now, Saint did not try to open the doors. He hit the emergency stop button, then door open, jamming the mechanism. The doors groaned, fought the pressure, and then slid open 3 feet, revealing the library lobby. It was a war zone. It was flooded with at least a dozen men in the fake MIC vests, all of them Albion Street crew thugs, armed and waiting. They stared, stunned for 1/2 second to see the doors open. Lorenzo did not give them a second. "Saint, clear!" Saint moved. He was not a man. He was a force. He launched himself through the gap, not with a gun, but with the heavy, metal hand crank generator, swinging it in a devastating arc that cleared a 5-foot circle. He was a wave breaker, a brutal, efficient path clearer. "Kellen, now Mara, stay on my back." Lorenzo charged, pulling me with him, his arm a steel bar, my body tucked against his side, shielded. I was running, but he was driving. We burst through the gap Saint had made. A man grabbed for me. Lorenzo did not slow. His free hand shot out, a stiff-fingered jab to the throat that made the man collapse, gagging. We were through them. We hit the main revolving doors, smashing through them into the shocking, cold, wet air of the night. From the roof above, a single, unsuppressed gunshot cracked the air, Rook's diversion. Shouts erupted behind us, but we were already moving, plunging into the darkness of an alleyway, the sounds of the city's sirens, our only cover. We did not flee the library. We exited. Saint drove, having procured a nondescript sedan from a side street. Kellen sat passenger, his gaze scanning the alleys. I was in the back, wedged between Lorenzo and the door, his solid, warm presence a strange anchor in the spinning chaos. Widemore Bridge was a skeleton of rust and iron, draped in a thick, wet fog that swallowed the city. It was an old, forgotten place. Kellen killed the headlights, rolling us to a stop at the bridge's entrance. "Stay in the car," Lorenzo commanded. He and Saint got out, melting into the fog. Kellen remained, his hand on the door, watching. My heart was a cold stone in my chest. "He is not here," I whispered. "It was a lie, a trap." "No," Kellen said, his voice soft. "Look." A shape, a shadow, stumbling out of the thickest part of the fog, near the center arch. It was a man, lurching, dragging one foot. "Rowan," I breathed. I was out of the car before Lorenzo could stop me, running, my feet slipping on the wet metal plates. "Mara, wait." But I could not. It was him. He was wearing the same plaid jacket he had when I last saw him, 3 days ago. He looked up, his face a ruin of bruises. "Ro?" I reached him as his knees buckled. I caught him, my arms wrapping around his thin frame. He was clutching his side, his hands. His wrists were raw, red, with the bloody remnants of cut zip ties. A long, angry strip of silver duct tape was stuck to his jaw. "I got you," I sobbed, pulling the tape from his mouth. He cried out, a raw sound. "I am here. It is me." "Mara," he gasped, his voice a hoarse rasp. He could barely focus. "God, they were everywhere." Who Morelli Lorenzo was there? His hand on my shoulder, his other hand scanning the fog-draped walkways. Saint and Kellen were moving past us, securing the far side of the bridge. "No," Rowan coughed, spitting blood. "Not Morelli. Not at first. It was Boyd, that bastard at Boyd." The world stopped. "Boyd," I repeated, my voice hollow. "He sold me out," Rowan choked out, when clinging to my jacket. He knew. He knew I had a backup drive. He knew where my safe house was. He told me he was helping, said he was scared, wanted to help. He led them right to me. The Albion crew, they took the drive, they beat me. Left me here. Said Morelli wanted a message sent. He had not just betrayed me, he had betrayed Rowan first. From the edge of the bridge, Lorenzo looked south, toward the port. The fog was thinner there, and the low-hanging clouds glowed a sickly, pulsating orange. Phoenix Gate Terminal, Lorenzo said, his voice flat. Morelli is not sending messages. He's destroying evidence. He's burning his own warehouse. As if summoned by the fire, the distant, frantic wail of sirens began to rise. Not the deep, steady siren of the New Brixton police, the high, thin, European-style shriek of the fake MIC cars. They were converging on the fires. They were hunting. Lorenzo's earpiece crackled. "Boss, do you read me, boss?" "Sable," Lorenzo breathed, his hand going to his ear. "Report?" "I am alive." The voice was rough, static-filled. The Boyd call was a double cross. He was a setup, but not just for you. He was bait. I followed him from Albion. He's not with Morelli. He's screaming. He's dragging his wife, Sharon, into the port. He's panicked. He's heading for Warehouse 14. Boss, it is an ambush. Morelli is there. He's closing the box. An ambush, and Boyd was walking right into it, dragging his innocent wife with him. Lorenzo looked at me. His face was granite. He saw Rowan, broken and bleeding, in my arms. He saw the fire in the sky. He heard the sirens, and he saw my face. He knew what I had said in the lumberyard. We save her. He did not need me to say it again. Nobody, he bit out, the words a low, vicious promise, gets left behind. "Boss, the perimeter is hot," Sable yelled. "They are swarming." "We move," Lorenzo said. He scooped Rowan up, lifting him in a single, powerful motion. We were running back to the car. The streets of the port were a nightmare. We were in the sedan, Kellen driving with insane precision through narrow corridors of stacked containers. The orange glow was everywhere. We rounded a corner, tires screaming, and slammed to a halt. The access road to Warehouse 14 was blocked. 3 Albion Street crew thugs, armed with bats, stepped out of the shadows. "I will take the alley," Saint said, getting out of the car. He was not asking. He was a blur of dark clothing, disappearing between 2 containers to face 3 men. "You take the gate." Lorenzo dumped Rowan in the back seat beside me. "Kellen, the gate, now." Kellen was out, running to the massive 10-foot chain-link gate that blocked the warehouse yard. It was chained and padlocked. Lorenzo turned to me. His eyes were on fire. The sound of the fight in the alley, short, brutal, and wet, started and ended in the space of 5 seconds. He grabbed the car keys from the ignition and shoved them into my hand. "Mara?" I stared at him, my hand tingling where he had pressed the keys. "Trust me," he said, his voice raw. "Drive to Warehouse 14. Get him inside. I will be right behind you. Go." My entire life, I had been a passenger. I had been a waitress. I had been a victim. I had never driven in a chase. I had never driven into danger. I looked at the keys. I looked at Rowan, groaning in the back seat. I looked at Lorenzo. I scrambled over the center console, pulling my skirt up, and jammed my foot on the gas. The engine roared. "Mara, what are you doing?" Rowan gasped. "I am getting us to Warehouse 14, I said, my voice shaking. Kellen made a noise, a sharp grunt, and the massive padlock broke. He wrenched the gate open, creating just enough space. I stomped on the accelerator. The car fishtailed, skidding on the wet pavement, and shot through the gap. I saw Lorenzo in the rearview mirror for 1 second, a dark shape turning to join Kellen, before I was plunged into the darkness of the warehouse yard. "Left," Rowan yelled, pointing a shaky finger. "By the stacks left." I spun the wheel, the tires screaming. The fake sirens were deafeningly close. I slammed on the brakes, and we slid to a halt in front of the massive, dark warehouse. I pulled Rowan out. We stumbled through a side door. Inside, it was cavernous, lit only by a few emergency floods, and there was crying. "I did not mean it," a voice shrieked. I just wanted to pay the debt. That is all he said. He would clear it." It was Boyd. He was in the center of the floor, holding his wife, Sharon, in a headlock. A small, snub-nosed pistol was pressed to her temple. His eyes were white with panic. "Boyd, let her go," I screamed. "Stay back. Mara, he is watching. He said he would kill me if I failed." "He wants you to fail, Boyd," a new voice said. "Lorenzo." He stepped out from behind a massive pillar. He was not even breathing hard. He had not followed me. He had beaten me here. His hands were empty, held loosely at his sides. "Stay back! Scavo, I will do it, I swear to God!" Boyd shrieked, his hand shaking. "I know," Lorenzo said, walking calmly forward. "He's counting on it. He's watching you right now." "What are you talking about?" "The camera," Lorenzo said, his voice reasonable. He pointed. "Up on the wall. Third window from the right, the old workers' cam. It is still active." He tapped his earpiece. "Tessa and Evo have been live streaming this room for the last 5 minutes. The whole city is watching you. Boyd, they are watching you hold that gun to your wife's head." Boyd's eyes darted up. He saw it. A tiny, blinking red light. The gun in his hand wavered, the fight drained out of him, replaced by a crushing, pathetic despair. He was not a killer. He was just a coward, trapped. The gun clattered to the concrete. Boyd collapsed, his body folding in on itself, sobbing. Sharon scrambled away, crawling toward me. A beautiful performance. Slow, deliberate clapping echoed from the deepest shadows of the warehouse. Santo Morelli stepped into the light. He was flanked by 2 men who looked more like refrigerators than human beings. He was wearing an expensive suit. He was done hiding. "Bravo. Scavo. Truly, you saved the damsel. You saved the brother. You even saved the fool." He smiled, a thin, reptilian gesture. He looked at me. "Now, give me the girl and the hard drive." Lorenzo actually smiled back, a cold, sharp twisting of his lips. "The hard drive is safe, Santo. And the data. It is with the people. It has been for almost half an hour now. You are too late." The smile on Morelli's face vanished. "Then you are all just loose ends." He did not look at us. He looked at one of his men. "Burn it. Burn them all." The bodyguard nodded, turned, and marched to a large industrial breaker box on the wall. He grabbed the main lever, a massive handle meant to cut power to the entire warehouse, and wrenched it down. Click. Nothing. The man frowned, confused. He lifted it and slammed it down again. Click. Still nothing. "Gage," Lorenzo said, his voice conversational, into his collar. "My compliments." Gage's voice crackled back over the comms, just loud enough for Morelli to hear. "Main circuit breaker has been disabled remotely. Boss, he can pull that lever all night. It is not connected to anything." Morelli's face went purple with rage. He roared, an animal sound, and pulled his own gun, a silver, gleaming pistol. Fine the old way. He aimed, not at Lorenzo, not at me, at Sharon, the innocent, who was cowering near my feet. He never fired. A black shadow dropped from the rafters, landing with a soundless thud directly between Morelli and Sharon. It was Rook. At the same instant, a harness dropped from the ceiling. Rook did not look at Morelli. He snapped the harness onto Sharon's vest. "Going up!" He grunted and tugged the line. Sharon was yanked into the air, lifted 20 feet into the darkness of the roof beams, completely out of the line of fire. Morelli's face was a mask of pure, rabid fury, his gun hand trapped, his body contorted. Rook, Gage, and Kellen had him covered, but the warehouse was suddenly, terribly, alive. The massive roll-up doors at the far end of the warehouse groaned and began to lift, flooding the cavernous space with the blinding, flashing red and blue lights of a dozen converging vehicles. Sirens shrieked, echoing off the metal walls. Men in dark tactical gear, vests marked with the fake MIC logo and TAA patches, poured in. Weapons raised. They were not here to arrest Morelli. They were here to execute his final, desperate plan to erase us all under the cover of a warrant. But something had changed. My men, Lorenzo's men, did not scramble. Rook and Gage, who had dropped from the rafters, joined Saint, Kellen, and Sable, who had materialized from the shadows. They did not form a line of defense. They formed a circle. With me, Lorenzo, and the broken, sobbing Boyd Kessler in the center, they formed a perfect 7-man protective ring, their backs to us, their faces to the armed squadron. It was the diner. All over again, the exact same formation. But we were no longer hiding in the shadows of Albion Street. We were standing in a harsh, tactical spotlight, exposed. Lorenzo did not look at the guns pointed at him. He looked at me, just once, a silent, grounding reassurance. Then he stepped out of the circle. His hands were empty, held open at his sides. He was unarmed. He walked slowly into the no-man's land between the two forces. He unclipped his personal radio from his vest and placed it gently on the concrete floor. "Gentlemen," he said. His voice was not a shout. It was a calm, clear statement that carried easily over the thrum of the idling engines. "I suggest you check your phones, all of you. You are on the air. The whole city is watching." As he spoke, a simultaneous chime and buzz rose from the tactical vests of the MIC officers. They looked down, confused. Tessa, from her secure location, had just pushed the final, devastating file to every phone pinging near the warehouse. The money map, the simple, undeniable flow chart showing TAA funds flowing to Morelli, and from Morelli, flowing directly into the Children's Harbor Initiative, a charity whose sole board director was Commissioner Cale Dorn, a man in the front line, his rifle aimed at Lorenzo's chest, lowered his phone. His face was pale. He looked at the man next to him, then back at his phone. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he unclipped his fake MIC badge and let it clatter to the concrete. A second man did the same, and a third. The line of guns wavered. "He made me!" Boyd Kessler suddenly shrieked, crawling on his hands and knees from the center of the circle, a desperate, broken animal. "He made me do it." Rook stepped forward, but not to silence him. He held out a small, digital microphone, the one Tessa had been using, its live light glowing red. "Who?" Rook growled. "Say the name." Boyd grabbed the microphone, his knuckles white. "Dorn Commissioner Cale Dorn. He runs it all, the mic, the TAA, all of it. He took the payments he made me sell out, Rowan. He promised to clear my debts." A heavy black sedan, which had been waiting at the back of the blockade, suddenly pushed through the disorganized line of cars. The door swung open and Commissioner Dorn stepped out, his face rigid with fury. He was here to coordinate the scene, to personally supervise the cleanup. "Oh, whoa, what is the meaning of this?" he bellowed, striding forward. "Stand down, arrest these." He stopped. Every man in his own unit was staring at him, and every one of them was holding up a phone, not taking orders, but recording him. The public live stream was now feeding dozens of private, individual streams. He was not a commander. He was the star of the show. Dorn's face went ashen. He spun, his authority vanishing, replaced by pure, rat-like panic. He lunged for his car. "Retreat," he screamed at his driver. "Pull back, now!" His car door was blocked. A second Scavo SUV, the one Evo had been driving, had pulled up, blocking the sedan's exit perfectly. Maceo Wynn stepped out. He was not in tactical gear. He was not armed. He just stood there, a solid, immovable object between Dorn and his escape. He had repaid his debt. "No!" Morelli roared. He saw it all dissolving. He saw his protector trapped, his army defecting. In one last, desperate, snake-like movement, he lunged. He was not aiming for Lorenzo. He was aiming for me. He crossed the few feet of space and grabbed me, yanking me back hard, his arm locking around my throat. The cold, silver pistol he had dropped and recovered pressed hard against my temple. "Everyone back," he screamed, his voice cracking. "Back or she dies. Scavo, I walk out of here with her, or she is dead, I swear it." Lorenzo froze. He did not raise his hands. He just looked at Morelli, his eyes flat, dead, and colder than the new Brixton River. "If you touch her," Lorenzo said, his voice a low, terrifying promise. "If you so much as bruise her skin, this entire city, every street, every alley, every shadow, will be a place you can never set foot in again. You will have nowhere left to hide." Morelli hesitated, his eyes wide, his arm trembling. He believed him. It was all the time they needed. Saint, from the edge of the circle, threw something. It was not a weapon. It was a high-intensity chemical flare, the same kind from the library. It landed at Morelli's feet and erupted in a blinding million-candela flash of white light. Morelli screamed, a pained, animal sound, squeezing his eyes shut, his arms spasming from the shock. In that split second of white-hot blindness, Kellen, the kind one, the one who had brought me cocoa, lunged. He did not attack Morelli. He grabbed my arm, wrenching me free from the loosened grip, pulling me to the ground and covering me with his own body. Simultaneously, Lorenzo moved. He did not punch. He did not shoot. He closed the distance in one silent step. He bypassed the flailing gun hand, his arms wrapped around Morelli, capturing one of Morelli's arms. He pivoted, sinking his weight. It was a shoulder lock, a non-lethal, inescapable submission hold. Morelli went down hard, his body contorted, screaming as the pressure was applied to his joint. It was over. And then, a new siren, a different one, deeper, steadier. Not the fake Mike shriek. This was the real thing. 2 dark blue sedans from the new Brixton District Attorney's Office rolled into the warehouse, their lights adding to the chaotic flashing. The live stream, seen by tens of thousands, had forced their hand. A legitimate assistant district attorney stepped out, holding a phone with the live feed and a very real, very legal warrant. The fake MIC cops, now badgeless, put their hands on their heads. Commissioner Cale Dorn stood frozen by his car, his face a mask of gray disbelief, as 2 real detectives cuffed him, the sound of the metal ratcheting shut echoing in the vast, suddenly quiet warehouse. Kellen helped me to my feet. My legs were shaking, barely holding me. I looked across the concrete floor. Lorenzo was standing there, his chest heaving, watching as the detectives hauled a defeated Morelli to his feet. He turned his head, and his eyes found mine. He walked toward me, ignoring the cops, the criminals, the flashing lights, until he was standing right in front of me. I looked up at this impossible man, this mafia boss, this protector, this stranger who had sat with me on a cold, forgotten step. "I am not afraid of you anymore," I whispered. The words were lost in the noise, but he read my lips. His face, hard as carved stone, softened, just a fraction. "I never wanted you to be," he replied, his voice rough. And there, in the middle of the warehouse, surrounded by the wreckage of a criminal empire, I stepped forward. He met me, his arms wrapping around me, the same as he had in the library, and I buried my face in his chest. He just held me, a solid, immovable object in a world that had finally stopped spinning. That night, the rain had stopped. We were in the attic of the Scavo Civic Trust, a vast open room with exposed brick and a massive arched window overlooking the city, the lights of which were just coming on. The window was open and the air smelled of wet pavement and a new, clean quiet. He was standing by the window, his back to me, the weight of the night on his shoulders. I walked up behind him, and my hand, though trembling, was steady as I placed it on his arm. He turned. His eyes were dark, tired, and full of questions. This time, I was the one who moved. I lifted my hand, my fingers tracing the stubborn line of his jaw. I cupped his chin, gently, tilting his face to mine. His eyes searched mine, a silent question. "Are you sure?" I gave him the same small nod he had given me. My answer. His breath hitched, his hands came up, not to grab, but to rest, one on my waist, the other sliding up my back, his thumb a warm, steady pressure. It was support, not possession. The heavy wool coat, his coat, which I was still wearing, slipped from my shoulders and pooled at my feet. He leaned in, slowly, and his lips met mine. The first kiss had been rescue. The second had been a promise. This was a claiming. It was slow and deep and sure. It was a quiet exploration, a silent conversation where no words were needed. His mouth was soft, yet firm, and he moved with a controlled patience that made my heart ache. My hands moved from his jaw to his hair, my fingers threading into the thick, dark strands. We whispered each other's names against each other's lips, a broken, breathless prayer. My heart was beating so fast, a frantic bird against his chest. He pulled back, just enough for us to breathe, and a small, quiet laugh escaped my lips. He smiled, a real, unguarded smile, and leaned his forehead against mine. The world outside faded away, leaving only the two of us, silhouettes in the open window, finding our peace in the warm, safe darkness. Rowan's testimony, combined with the data, was enough. He signed on to run a new port workers training program, funded by the assets seized from Dorn and the Children's Harbor Initiative. Boyd Kessler took a deal. His confession earned him a lighter sentence, but Sharon and his family were moved into witness protection, funded by Lorenzo. Maceo, his debt paid, began his community service, working nights as part of the new neighborhood security team, run by Saint. Lorenzo bought the Blue Finch Diner. He turned it over to the new workers' union. It became a community coffee shop. He had a small table installed out front with a plaque that read, "A place to tell your story." One evening, weeks later, I found myself sitting on that same bottom step, but I was not cold, and I was not crying. Lorenzo sat beside me, leaving that same respectful foot of space between us. The 7 men were there: Rook, Sable, Evo, Saint, Kellen, Messio, and Gage. They were spread out at the alley by the curb, just as they had been, but they were not tense. Rook was laughing at something Kellen said. They were not a unit. They were a family. Lorenzo pushed a simple manila envelope across the concrete. It was not a gift. It was a plan. "The Quinn Scavo Vocational Fund," he said. "It needs a director." I looked at him. At this man who had changed my world between one midnight and the next. We were not building a marriage. We were building a foundation. I nodded, and as the new Brixton night settled in, we just sat. And if anyone else in that neighborhood found themselves crying on a doorstep, they would not be alone. 7 men would be there, and they would wait with them until dawn unlocked everything. Thank you so much for listening to our story. We would love to know where in the world you are tuning in from, so please leave a comment below and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Mafia Boss Stories. Give this video a like and show your support by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.